We are going to do a bit of a deep dive into the profession of medical assisting. So we're just going to give you a little bit of the agenda for today. We're going to outline the profession itself, a little bit of history, define accreditation in all of its glorious forms, and also talk about strategies to address what is one of the big hurdles that we get, which is the concept of overcoming gold standard. Really, the purpose of this is to provide some background to the profession, outline the industry, the history, where NHA fits specifically in this profession. All right, so I'm going to turn the majority of this over to our subject matter expert, Christiana. She's going to talk for the most part about a lot of this stuff. So Christiana, I'll drive the presentation, but you're driving the content. So you let us know what you want to cover.
Sure. I thought it was really important for us to discuss the profession. I know that our certifications have a lot of the similar acronyms, right? And a lot of times we're saying CCMA or CMAA. And I just wanted to highlight and differentiate what is different between the two. When we hear the term CCMA, we're talking about a certified clinical medical assistant. This is the MA that is in the field, right? When you're in the field and you have an employer talking about their medical assistant, I need to hire a medical assistant, unless they specify administrative, more often than not, they would be referring to our certified clinical medical assistant. And that is because CCMAs have clinical and administrative training. And you will see on those different test plans the domains that are covered. And the CCMA does have a portion dedicated to administrative skills. When you hear somebody refer to a CMAA, the Certified Medical Administrative Assistant, a lot of times in the field, they might be referred to as the front office staff, an administrative assistant, a receptionist. You don't often hear secretary used very often, but it's generally those front of the house professionals who are the first face that customers and patients see when they enter the healthcare facility. CMAAs do not have clinical training. So when we're talking about a cross-trained medical assistant trained in both clinical and administrative, we are always referring to the CCMA credential. Again, in the NHA world, that is what the employers, the market would be referring to as the traditional medical assistant, somebody who is cross-trained. One of the important things that we get asked quite a bit as subject matter experts or strategists are questions regarding scope of practice. Sometimes we'll have people present questions to us regarding, hey, what is a medical assistant allowed to do? Or is a medical assistant allowed to do this? And I know that a lot of us understand this, but it's important to discuss that an MA scope of practice varies by state. Each state medical board determines what an MA is allowed to do. Now, it is important to understand that it is established by the state in which the MA is employed. Where I live in the state of Pennsylvania, the state of Ohio is less than 15 minutes away from me. Ohio has different regulations than Pennsylvania does. So it's going to depend on where that MA is employed. So for everybody who has clients in that employer market, they are going to be incredibly attuned to what the scope of practice is for their employees that are actually working for them. In some states, a medical assistant is not allowed to draw blood, whereas in most states they are. But if you're in California, Louisiana, Nevada, Washington, an MA cannot draw blood without a different certification or specific training required by that state. That being said, medical assistants, because of the nature of their profession, perform and work under the license of a provider. This falls under the Latin doctrine of respondeat superior, which means let the master answer. State boards will identify who can train and delegate tasks to the MA. In short, what this means and why this is important, and you'll hear this a lot in the field, and this is covered in our medical law and ethics modules. that a wrongful act, which is considered a tort, that is performed by a medical assistant, in most cases, the physician employer, whether that's a physician who privately employs the medical assistant or the employer, such as a large healthcare organization, they would be responsible for the medical assistant's actions. So anytime we get a question about is a medical assistant allowed to do this, my immediate response would always be you must refer to the state medical board scope of practice for which they're employed, and then always act on the side of being conservative and informing them, because medical negligence is one of the number one causes for lawsuits in the United States. So because we live in such a litigious society, from the certification point of view, it's really important for us to be conservative and not offer any additional information in terms of what we would say that they should be allowed to do. It's really based on what they are trained to do by a licensed provider. So hopefully that clears up a little bit of some confusion or, nuances regarding to the scope of practice. They definitely could work at the front desk. This is where we talk about the importance of cross-training. Why they would need those skills would be coverage for the office. The offices that I've worked in the past, I worked as a clinical medical assistant, but there were often times that I would have to cover the front desk and the duties and responsibilities of the front desk. So if nothing else, just for help with coverage, a lot of times they will break up the responsibilities across multiple people, and having that cross-trained functionality is what really gives them the edge. When you think about a doctor, we always use the term doctor, Dr. Jones, Dr. Smith. But then when you use the term cardiologist, you know that cardiologist is specialized in treating the heart and cardiovascular disorders. When we say certified clinical medical assistant, what we're doing is we're bringing focus on the fact that this person has been trained as a clinical medical assistant. It's kind of a specialty, even though they are a medical assistant by all, I don't want to say generic terms of the word, but they can perform these administrative and clinical skills. Our certification is a comprehensive cross-training certification exam. Yeah, absolutely. Because the medical administrative assistant goes into greater detail. The CCMA administrative learnings are very high level. We talk about how to do functions within the office, how to do certain things that might be required to operate a medical office, the administrative portion of an office on a day-to-day basis. However, the certified administrative assistant can go even deeper. A medical assistant who really wants to explore the entirety of a medical assistant's job range would definitely benefit from both credentials, because they're going to get that more detailed training and detailed information that is required for that CMAA examination. Because of the accreditation standards, because of national education standards and requirements. Accreditation bodies and educational institutions set these standards for medical assistants. It is the state's responsibility to decide what they want to teach. So we teach at a very broad level. For example, at this point, IV therapy has not been introduced to the medical assisting profession because of the risks associated with the procedure, and it is considered much more invasive. Therefore, we don't teach IV therapy until there is a trend in the United States that this is something that becomes what is placed on medical assistants. That is not a topic that we would cover. But because all of the states, except for 4, allow phlebotomy, of course we're going to cover phlebotomy. So we're going to cover everything that is required whereas states will make their own personal determinations as to what medical assistants in their jurisdiction will be able to perform. They would need to refer to their state medical act as established by their state medical board. That's where you find information on that. A lot of websites you could go to that says, that will say, what is the scope of practice for a medical assistant in the state of Delaware? And you click on a link and, it'll bring you to that state's medical act established by the medical board. And it'll take you to the section where they talk about medical assistants or health aides or, things of that in that category, explaining what they are allowed and what they aren't allowed to do. So an educator would definitely want to start there. And then they're going to want to talk with employers in their market, in their area, and find out what the common competencies are in their area in order to really focus on making sure they're devoting enough time to the most critical competencies regionally.